And our host for today's SLPS is Sally Hopley, the coordinator of sustainable practices at Metro Community College.
Thank you, Ben, and thank you all for joining us today. It's my pleasure today to introduce our speaker. Our speaker today is Chissell Chissell from Project Drawdown. And Chissell is an operations and governance specialist working to champion diverse and collaborative leadership for a regenerative and beautiful future on Earth. As Vice President of Operations and Engagement at Project Drawdown, Chissell draws deep on her experience and interdisciplinary background in local and state government, law, business, and social equity to nourish a culture of excellence at Project Drawdown and to facilitate partnerships that move the world towards climate solutions. Prior to Project Drawdown, Chissell was a practicing attorney, advising the City of Baltimore and Maryland Environmental Service. She also served as mayor of the town of Highland Beach, Maryland. Chissell holds a JD from the University of Maryland School of Law, an MS in Environmental Science from Johns Hopkins University, an MBA from the University of San Francisco, and a BA in journalism from Howard University. We are thrilled to have her with us today. She is going to take us through a little bit of what Project Drawdown is, and then talk a little bit specifically about how education impacts GHG emissions.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Sally, for that introduction, and thank you, Ben. It's a pleasure to join you today to talk about Project Drawdown, which is a nonprofit organization, research organization founded in the San Francisco Bay Area. Let me share my presentation with you. Okay, are you able to see my slides?
Yes, we can see them, Crystal.
Okay, great. So Project Drawdown, as I said, it's a nonprofit research organization founded in the San Francisco Bay Area. Now, levels of greenhouse gases in the Earth's atmosphere are higher than at any time in the past 400,000 years. This has led to global warming, which is the rise of average global temperatures, and the resulting climate changes that we're now experiencing, including extreme weather events, drought, coastal flooding, wildfires, and other changes. But it is possible to stop global warming with solutions that exist today. So what is drawdown? Drawdown is the point in time when concentrations of greenhouse gas levels in the atmosphere stop climbing and start to decline. So to stop global warming, we have to work together to achieve drawdown. One of Project Drawdown's main objectives is to name drawdown as the goal for humanity, as the only goal that makes sense. It's an ambitious goal, but an achievable goal. So rather than only slowing the rise of greenhouse gases, we propose that drawdown should be the goal. So stopping the upward trend of greenhouse gas concentrations altogether, and then reversing it, ultimately reversing global warming. Another objective of Project Drawdown is to change the worldwide conversation about climate change and global warming. So we are working on shifting to a focus on solutions and the possibility and opportunity that's available to us right now. Now, Project Drawdown's work is focused on answering this question, is drawdown possible? Over the past several years, Project Drawdown's research team has worked on collecting and analyzing the best available information and data on climate solutions. Our team has conducted analysis of peer-reviewed and widely cited sources to determine the scientific consensus on existing solutions. Our research team has developed models designed to evaluate the potential of individual solutions to reduce the amount of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere and to determine their combined potential to move toward drawdown over a 30-year period. The aim of this work is to determine whether drawdown is not only possible, but also financially feasible by implementing existing technologies and practices. It's been a collaborative research project, and it's an ongoing research project. So to date, we've had a team of about 75 researchers. They're from 26 countries on 6 continents. So this research was conducted with a multinational, multi-ethnic, multicultural group of professionals from a variety of academic backgrounds and professions. So we wanted to demonstrate with this broad and diverse team that broad collaboration is both necessary and possible for global climate action. I've seen Project Drawdown publish this book, Drawdown, as well as a website, drawdown.org, to reflect back to the world what humanity is already doing to end the climate crisis. This is a global analysis of what's possible over a 30-year period. If adoption of existing solutions increases worldwide at a vigorous but a plausible rate in the coming years. So our research projects the potential of these solutions to reduce greenhouse gases, as well as their projected cost to implement them and projected savings to be had from implementing them at scale. 80 solutions are included in this analysis. So this is not every solution to global warming that exists in the world. It's a specific set of solutions that meets specific criteria. So to qualify for inclusion, we looked at these criteria. So first, a solution had to be currently available and already scaling somewhere in the world. It had to be financially viable. So solutions that are effective but far too expensive to implement are not included. All of the solutions have a proven potential to reduce greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. Any negative consequences of the solution had to be outweighed by its positive benefits. So no solutions are included that would cause more harm than good. And finally, all of the solutions included were solutions for which there was sufficient data available to be able to do a statistical analysis of the technology or the practice at a global scale. Now, this is a very large and complex research project, so our modelers also had to make some key assumptions in order to deal with the complexity of this system. So one thing that we assume is that any necessary policies to scale solutions would be in place. So we don't do an analysis of whether there are sufficient laws around the world to implement these solutions or whether the necessary policies are in place. Cost and prices of the solutions are estimated conservatively and estimated based on historical trends. And we did not do any modeling of financial variables where the costs were too variable or too localized. And another assumption is or actually it's a non-assumption, we have not assumed any major technological advancements. So everything included is based on current technology, not on any future inventions. A simple way to look at the solutions included in Drawdown is this. There are 2 broad categories of ways to reach Drawdown. The first is to reduce and stop emissions of greenhouse gases going up into the atmosphere. This is done by replacing energy from fossil fuels with renewable energy and by reducing our consumption of resources through conservation and technological efficiency. The second broad category is to protect and enhance sinks. So this is nature's ability to absorb greenhouse gases through photosynthesis or chemical changes. The solutions included also span a wide array of sectors. There are solutions included in the electricity generation category, so renewable energy solutions, building efficiency solutions, solutions related to transportation, such as electric vehicles and mass transit, materials solutions, addressing what we use and how we dispose of it, such as recycling and composting. And also, so these are those categories are what we generally think of when we think of climate solutions, but this analysis goes broader to also analyze solutions in food, agriculture, and land use, as well as some rights-based solutions such as universal health and education. Now, I'd like to show you some examples of some of the 80 solutions that are included. To give an idea of the diversity of solutions that we already have at hand. % of humans use wood, charcoal, animal dung, crop residues, and coal as cooking fuel. And millions of people die every year from heart and lung diseases that are caused by inhaling the smoke from cooking with these carbon-emitting fuels. Almost 16 gigatons of carbon emissions could be prevented using improved cook stove technologies that reduce the harmful smoke, reduce the amount of carbon emissions, and also help to decrease deforestation that's caused by the harvest of wood for fuel. Like so many of the solutions, this one, clean cook stoves, can immediately improve human life. And it's something that we should pursue even if there were no climate crisis. So electric bikes are the most common and the fastest selling alternative fuel vehicle. 31 million electric bikes were sold in 2012, and 95% of those sold in China. Improved methods of growing rice emit less methane. This solution, improved rice cultivation, is taking hold primarily in Asia and primarily among smallholder farmers. Indigenous peoples around the world use a variety of practices in their stewardship of forests that actually reduce emissions and increase biosequestration of carbon. Studies show that the best outcomes for carbon drawdown happen when indigenous people have legal control over their land, what's called tenure. So not just when indigenous people are living and managing the land, but when they actually have legal control, studies show that there's a greater carbon drawdown benefit. And this also points out that traditional wisdom around the world has a climate benefit. All solutions are not reliant on new technology. This slide shows 20 of the most effective of the 80 solutions in terms of their potential to avoid or reduce greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. 5 of the electricity generation solutions, so alternative renewable energy solutions that were analyzed, are represented in the top 20. This is no surprise since we know that moving toward 100% renewable energy is essential to reaching drawdown. But here's an insight that may be somewhat surprising. Solutions related to food, agriculture, and land use taken together are the most impactful set of solutions. 8 of these solutions relate to how we produce food, the type of food we consume, and how much we waste. So taken together, the land use and food system solutions sort of transform traditional thinking on climate action. When we act in harmony with nature, when we rely on the Earth's wisdom and natural processes, there is a great climate action benefit to be had. We don't have to rely solely on technology. Now, although the individual's solutions are important, and I've showed you a list of some of those that are most effective, we have to remember that all of the solutions work together as a system. So although some may have greater impact from a global perspective, there are no unimportant solutions. They work together as a system, they interact with each other. If we categorize them into similar groups, we see that together they can have more impact than individual solutions. So it's very important to remember that we can't single out individual solutions to focus on and ignore the rest. So in Project Drawdown's modeling of the solutions, the individual solutions are integrated within and across systems to avoid double counting of their impact, to ensure that the market's estimates that they're based on are not overestimated, and that the same land use is not counted twice for different purposes, and also to account for the effects of how the solutions interact with each other. So systems thinking is very important for climate action. Now, does education reduce greenhouse gas emissions? The answer is yes, but it does so indirectly, but also significantly. So let's take a closer look at 2 of the drawdown solutions that are closely linked. These 2 solutions are closely intertwined, but they have the potential to have a significant impact on emissions. And those solutions are family planning and educating girls. Now, both of these solutions impact global population growth. Changes in population have a direct impact on emissions. The number of people on Earth consuming goods and services across sectors create higher emissions in higher population scenarios. So in projecting the impact of the family planning and educating girls solutions on greenhouse gas emissions, Project Drawdown based its modeling on meeting the United Nations median population projection of 9.7 billion people by 2050. Without investment in family planning worldwide, the UN projects that the population could be 1 billion higher than the 9.7 billion median population projection. So Project Drawdown modeled the impact of these solutions based on the difference in how much electricity, heating and cooling, food, waste, and transportation would be consumed if the population grows more slowly between now and 2050. The family planning solution is defined as securing women's rights to voluntary contraception and reproductive health resources, both in developed countries such as the US and in less developed countries where the unmet need for modern methods of contraception is high. Globally, an estimated 214 million women have an unmet need for family planning. In the drawdown analysis, family planning is assumed to be the principal driver for the population change that can reduce emissions. Clear, Project Drawdown's analysis of family planning is focused on both more developed countries as well as less developed countries. So this solution is not based on telling all of the less developed countries that they must slow their population growth. It's based on the population worldwide. So this chart shows in blue that about half of the gigatons of carbon dioxide equivalent that would be avoided from the least and less developed countries where population is projected to grow the fastest. That's shown in the blue wedge. The orange wedge shows that 40% of emissions would be avoided from more developed countries, where populations are smaller, but per capita emissions are higher. And this chart shows population growth over the period from 2015 to 2050. In the drawdown analysis, the educating girl solution is defined as providing equal quality of education as well as access to education to girls and young women who are currently being denied access. So education for girls, especially in the first 12 to 13 years of education, leads to improved livelihoods, upward mobility, delayed marriage, delayed childbearing, and fewer children than their peers with less education. So the effect of education on population is indirect, but we can say that educating girls increases the uptake of family planning. So that's why these two solutions are very closely intertwined. So in the initial analysis, our research team looked at the total projected reduction in greenhouse gas emissions from improved adoption of family planning, and then sort of split that effect, that estimate among these two solutions of educating girls and family planning, because it's very difficult to determine whether the impact comes from one or the other solution because they're so closely intertwined. So it's important to keep in mind that education is a girl's right. Slowing population growth is a positive outcome of providing this basic right. So it's important to keep in mind that we're not saying that we should give girls education, provide more access to quality education for girls for the sole purpose of addressing the climate crisis. Not at all. Providing education for girls is a basic human right. Slowing population growth is a co-benefit, a benefit of providing that basic right. And it's also important to know that years of schooling alone is not the solution. The solution is quality education that's also empowering and a transformative education, a transformative experience for girls. So just the basic provision of years of schooling is not sufficient if it's not also improving girls' position in society. Now, beyond impacts on greenhouse gas emissions, educating girls can have further climate benefits. For one example is increased women's leadership. This is made more likely when girls are educated. and it's actually been shown to benefit environmental action. Women's leadership has been shown to benefit environmental action. In a study of 130 countries, those with a higher number of women in parliament were more likely to ratify environmental treaties. And in another study showed that across 90 countries, those with higher numbers of women in parliament tended to protect land areas at higher rates. So there is evidence that women's leadership has a direct impact on climate action. Further, educating girls helps girls to develop life skills. For example, to participate in the emerging green economy, to take part in jobs in the new green economy. And also, educated girls and women are better equipped for coping with natural disasters and extreme weather. Now, education goes beyond the educating girls solution. So a good way to counteract climate despair is to learn about solutions. I think it's important now that we not be fooled into thinking that this problem is too big to solve, or that we need to invent new technologies to address the problem. This is where education is really important for all of us, so that we understand what is already at hand to address the problem. Understand that humanity is already at work in implementing solutions. Knowing about the full range of solutions helps you figure out where you will fit in. It will help you to become a systems thinker. And more importantly, equally importantly, is that we take this time to collaborate with others. Collaboration is such a key and important part to climate action now. We need to remember that it's not each of us individually taking action that's going to solve the problem, but really it's our collective impact in our families, communities, regions, countries, and around the world. So recommend drawdown.org as a resource for learning about solutions. You'll see there information about the 80 solutions that were included in Project Drawdown's analysis. In addition, we include 20 solutions that we call coming attractions. These are solutions that are still nascent, still under development, not yet scaling in the world, but that have great potential when they come online, when they are improved to reduce greenhouse gas concentrations and move us more quickly to drawdown. You'll also find at drawdown.org technical summaries about each of the solutions if you want to do a deep dive, descriptions of our research methodology, research references, and there's a tool where you can rank the solutions by costs and savings projections. In February of 2020, we'll be releasing the results of our research team's updated analysis of the solutions, so stay tuned for that as well. And that is my presentation for today. Thank you so much for joining us. And to the hosts, I'm not able to end my screen sharing, so I will leave that to you.
Thank you, Crystal, for an amazing, informative presentation on the diverse solutions to climate change that are at the intersection of policy, science, and advocacy. We do have a few questions in the chat box, but I want to remind all attendees, if you do have a question for Crystal, please enter it in the chat box. Because right now we have 3 questions, but we'd like to see a few more. So the first question that I have for you, Crystal, is that you mentioned women in parliament in your presentation. How many solutions, the solutions that you mentioned, are moving forward as a policy strategy, or is Project Drawdown more of an advocacy tool?
Well, actually, Project Drawdown's work is focused on research, specifically on analysis of existing solutions, identifying solutions, and projecting their potential to move toward drawdown. So we are leaving it to the policymakers, government officials, citizens, solution implementers, educators, and everyone else to make use of this information as according to their expertise. So we, although it may seem like we are advocating for solutions, and of course we do support use of solutions, our primary intention is to be a objective source of information about the science related to existing solutions. But we are, to further answer your question, we are seeing local governments take up this drawdown framework of solutions, use it to analyze what solutions are available and most effective in their specific regions. So there is policy making being influenced by this information from Project Drawdown.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. The next question that we do have is, do you see climate change as more of a cost issue or a political matter?
That's a good question. So probably a political matter, because politics helps to drive where resources are placed. So it's both politics as well as investment. Will both have a huge influence on the scaling of solutions worldwide.
Okay, thank you. And the third question we have, you mentioned education in reducing greenhouse gas emissions and family planning. What do you see the role as for higher education in helping with the research and that you're doing at Project Drawdown?
Yeah, higher education is indispensable. So first of all of our researchers have extensive and diverse academic backgrounds. All of them have at least a master's level of education, and about half of them have PhD level. Another important way that higher education is contributing is in the partnerships that Project Drawdown is forming in order to expand this research worldwide and to make it more specific to local contexts and specific regions. So we are working to partner with universities and research associations around the world. One of the most significant partnerships is the partnership we have with Penn State University that in September hosted the first Global Drawdown Conference and brought together researchers, academics, and solution implementers to discuss the specific sectors of solutions and individual solutions, to look at where further research is needed and how to further implement and expand the reach of solutions. Another example is the Georgia Drawdown effort, which is a partnership of the Ray C. Anderson Foundation, Georgia Tech, and a couple of other universities in Georgia that have done an analysis, similar to the global analysis that Project Drawdown did. They've done an analysis for the state of drawdown to determine which are the most viable and accessible solutions in the Georgia area, and which are most effective so that efforts in Georgia can be focused specifically on those solutions. So higher education plays an indispensable role in furthering not only Project Drawdown's analysis, but climate action worldwide.
Okay, we do have 3 more questions that did come in the chat box. So the first one is if you could describe maybe the main goals of Project Drawdown. I know there's quite a few, but if we could just, if you could describe it in, 2 or 3 sentences, like what the main goals of Project Drawdown.
Sure. And I covered that at the beginning, but I'm happy to say it again because it's so important. So 3 main objectives. One is to name the goal as drawdown. So there's a lot that we're hearing now about the climate crisis and about climate change. We hear a lot about the problem, a lot of definition of the problem, a lot of projection of the difficulties that we're going to face, the tragic effects that we'll face from climate change. So one of the goals of Project Drawdown is to focus attention on drawdown, working toward reversing the concentrations of greenhouse gases, not just slowing the rise of the concentrations, but actually having that arrow go down. So actually reducing the concentrations of greenhouse gases. Secondly, our aim is to change the conversation about climate change. So it can be overwhelming and depressing to constantly hear about the tragedies that we're going to face in the coming years. So we want to shift the conversation to a discussion about solutions, to a focus on solutions, to lifting up the stories, the success stories of solutions being implemented. And not only that, but also to sort of focus on what are the emerging questions as we start to look at solutions more closely. What are the further questions that need to be answered? So Project Drawdown has done this initial study and analysis, but it doesn't answer every question about how do we reach drawdown. So by making this solutions discussion, putting it in the forefront, is a way to get all of the brilliant minds around the world focused on how do we faster scale up adoption of these solutions? How do we improve them? How do we make them more affordable? So that's a second aim. And then the third objective of Project Drawdown is to do this research and analysis of what are the most effective solutions that we already have in hand. So not that we're ruling out that new solutions will be invented that may take us toward drawdown faster, but looking at what we have in hand already, what humanity is already doing, what is the potential of these solutions? Can we reach drawdown? Toward that end, our research team is working now to look at an additional sector of solutions that are related to the oceans. So that's something, more information that we'll be hopefully releasing in mid-2020. So becoming a go-to source for information about solutions is a third objective of Project Drawdown, as well as where most of our effort is focused. So we also have some other programs that we're working on. So we're working on a pilot program called Drawdown Labs to involve corporations in looking at and providing the next level of business leadership. So to look at not only the emissions in their own enterprises, but how they can positively influence reducing greenhouse gases for businesses at large. So we're working on that. And we're also working more on amplifying the stories of 2 things. One, implementing of drawdown solutions worldwide. So featuring the stories of communities and local governments who have taken on this drawdown model of using a broad array of solutions, and also a focus on providing a network for educators at all levels, middle school, high school, university, providing a network for them to share how they've used drawdown in their, and teaching about solutions in their curriculum and coursework. So these are some of the things that we're working on.
You're working on quite a bit, and those all sound very exciting. And I know, some of the attendees on the call are in higher ed, so they'd be interested in reaching out to you further. We do have two more questions. One is, how does one educate women with family planning education in areas where there are social barriers preventing access to these options, such as areas where there is a caste system?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I'm not going to be able to answer that because it's not my area of expertise, but we recognize that this is one of the obstacles to implementing that solution. There are many organizations and research institutions that are focused on exactly that question. One of them that comes to mind is the Brookings Institution, and I know that there are many others. So I would refer you to their work for an answer to that question, because it's really actually outside of my expertise and out of Project Drawdown's expertise. So as I mentioned earlier, there were certain limitations to our analysis, and one of those is developing policies to help the solutions to get implemented. So our projections look at what's possible if the necessary policies are already in place. So this brings me back to what I was mentioning about questions that arise. We need more than just Project Drawdown and our team of researchers to be working on this, on these questions. We need all of the expertise around the world, and we recognize and celebrate the expertise that is out there in the world, and we really hope that there will be an effort to join forces for a collective action to get all of the solutions implemented and implemented quickly.
Okay, thank you so much. And I believe this is our last question. It says, thanks for sharing. The focus on solutions is very positive. What are the timeframes over which the solutions need to be implemented for the atmosphere to see the impact?
Right, so that's another good question that I can't specifically answer, but I can tell you that the drawdown analysis focused on a 30-year period from 2020 to 2050. So this question of how fast we need to act is, of course, being hotly debated and focused on, because we've got the IPCC report suggesting that we must act as quickly as possible within the next 10 years in order to avoid exceeding the 1.5 degree temperature rise. So I would say that what we need to do is act as quickly as possible and scale solutions as quickly as possible. But as far as exact timeframes or numbers on that, then I defer to the many brilliant climate scientists who are working and have been working for decades on that question.
All right, thank you so much. It looks, that's all the questions that I have in the chat box, but I'll turn it over to Sally. Do you have any other questions?
No, I don't.
Okay. Well, that's all the questions that we have, Crystal. Thank you for such a wonderful presentation. Our next presentation will be on February 5th, Wednesday at noon again. And our host for the next presentation is the Nebraska Recycling Council. That will be the next next event. Everybody have a wonderful break, and thank you again, Crystal.
Thank you.